Okay, so thank you everyone for being here, and for our outside guests, thank you for being here. Today we have Professor Erin Vicente, who will talk to you about public speaking skills. Professor Vicente is really the expert on campus in public speaking. She has been running workshops in public speaking and running the whole initiative in speaking across the curriculum, across the whole campus for us for a number of years. And today we're lucky enough to have her in our department, in the communication department. She recently earned her doctorate degree from Northeastern University in organizational communication and leadership. And in addition to teaching our public speaking courses, she also teaches a number of courses, including the media literacy course, which is the capstone course for our undergraduate students. And actually soon she will be joining the graduate students and teaching graduate courses. And one of the courses will probably be in public speaking. So Professor Vicente, before joining academia, she has also taught in a number of other universities. And before that, she held senior account executive and financial planning positions with Viacom, CBS Radio, and at Fleet Boston Financial. And over the years, she has involved our students in a number of connected learning projects, especially in public relations courses, where students have worked with nonprofit organizations like Cradles for Crayons to create PR campaigns for them. So thank you so much for being here, and welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. That's far too generous. I always think about when someone calls me an expert in public speaking, and I think, how does one become an expert? I think it's experience. It's really getting used to who you are as a person, your style, your delivery, really becoming better at articulating what it is you're going after. So I think what's made me, I guess, an expert is my business background, being in front of a lot of people in many different situations, learning how to talk to different audiences. The second thing I'll say before I begin and kick into material that I hope you'll be able to take with you and actually apply to your real life experiences, whether you're talking to a friend or in a business setting, is that you never know what's going to happen when you're about to give a presentation. So today I got here early, I was eager, excited, I saw Professor Janbeck and I said I'm going to head over because Public Speaking 101, you should always check out the room that you'll be speaking in. So I came over and technology wasn't here. And so hence I've had to learn to adapt what I thought was the way I was originally going to begin the presentation. So that comes with time, that comes with getting, again, accustomed to who you are and being able to roll with the punches, as they say, or being able to adapt on the fly. So if the technology is set up, I would like to show you a video, but before that, I will hand out an article that goes along with the video that I am about to show you. It's a TED Talk. How many of you are familiar with TED Talks? Okay, right? The smartest, brightest, best effective speakers out there get, on a TED Talk. Now, I could probably say that's maybe one of my goals at some point, but you'll be listening to Amy Cuddy. The video is maybe long in what you would consider time, but not really when she's speaking, because it's so engaging and what she has to say is really important. She teaches out of the Harvard Business School, and again, she's one who may be considered another expert in public speaking, and talks specifically about nonverbal communication, which is an area I'll talk with you about tonight. How does nonverbal communication actually play into what we're saying? And you'll also have the opportunity again to glance over this article, and then we'll recap what she has said on the video and move forward. In reading the article, did everybody have a chance to read the article? What do you think her main message is, and why would I even show a video like this when talking about effective speaking, public speaking? What do you think? Don't all raise your hand at one time. Did you understand what she was saying?
Yeah. Between the article and the video, it's kind of like, imagine you have power, but don't lie about it.
Right.
So people can sense liars, and they will know if you don't have power, but you're faking it.
Right. So tell the truth, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What else does the article or video say that you think was important in why would I show it? What did you get from it? And hopefully you gained something from it. And you're correct. Nonverbal communication is really important. But what she talks about more specifically in the article is that you can be competent but not trustworthy, right? Someone can respect you, but what? Not necessarily trust you. That it's actually more important in today's society, in order to be an effective speaker, to realize that it's not only content that matters, it's not only being competent, but it's whether or not the audience really, has the notion to trust you, okay? It's not just about respecting you. I could respect someone, but not necessarily trust someone. If I trust someone, then I most likely respect them, okay? And what else she's saying is, again, nonverbal communication plays a huge role in the content that we're speaking about. So a couple of quick points, and I don't really want to lecture at you again tonight. I'd like to get to a workshop point where we can do a couple of exercises, but I do want to know your level of knowledge. What is rhetoric? When I begin to talk about rhetoric, what is rhetoric? What do we know about rhetoric? Okay. So the definition in its earliest form is the art of the spoken word. And I'm sorry, that's a little bit hard to see. I'm not sure if I can get it bigger. I don't really want to even take the chance because I've wasted so much time thus far on the technology. So we'll go with it, and don't worry. That's another tip. Always make sure that your PowerPoint is legible and readable by the audience. And perhaps if I had more time, I think I could make it bigger, but I won't even go there. The earliest form of rhetoric, and what we know when that term even came about during, the ancient Greek times, is that, again, it was just the art of the spoken word. What we found today through the modern definition is that rhetoric really encompasses everything. It's the art of the spoken word, it's the art of the written word, it's found in modern culture through signs, and everything really is a sign. Everything has some sort of significance to us. So I could say right now that the symbol on your vest right there, that polo symbol, has, signification to maybe you or me, but in different ways. So I might look at polo as, perhaps, that's the more, expensive clothing. It might mean something different to me than it does to you. But we can actually call that rhetoric beyond the words. So again, rhetoric encompasses everything, and it moves way beyond political discourse, way beyond the art of the spoken word, and it's really, we're surrounded by it through culture, through artifacts, etc. And there's much deeper thinking to that process, but I do just want you to know it moves beyond speaking. Aristotle, again, offered a more modern definition, believe it or not, even though he was a philosopher during the Greek times. He was way beyond his years. That's an expression that he was really smart. And knew much more than probably his age would have signified. But again, he really found that persuasion is found in everything that we do. And again, it moves from beyond the political discourse to actually moving audiences through action, moving audiences to action through argument. So how we argue can really, again, not just be the spoken word, it can be the written word, it can also be through a sign, okay? Your vest could, again, be an argument that you belong to a certain social class. Think about that. So, and I'm not saying that's what you meant when you put on the vest tonight at all. I'm just saying that we could get some sort of, sign from that particular emblem. So again, he offered a more extensive definition, and I do, again, want you to really focus on that thought. He believed that there was 3 types of proof to actually decide whether or not somebody was trustworthy, not only competent, but trustworthy. And the first type of rhetorical proof that he talked about was ethos. Have you heard of this term before? No? Okay. It'd be great. You have? Okay, you changed your mind there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a sign. You gave me a wait. Yes, I do. So ethos is really credibility. It's not emotion. We often think it's emotion because of the E, but it's not emotion. It's credibility. So someone has to bring an element of credibility to the table when speaking, when writing, when even designing a particular emblem. How does one gain that credibility? And if we're looking at brands or logos, etc. But if we're thinking about just the spoken word, because this workshop is focusing on public speaking, how does one exhibit credibility? How did Amy Cuddy, if you've never seen her before, how did she exhibit credibility in your eyes? Is it because I put on the video? So you're supposed to be watching it? Was it my title as professor that actually gave her video credibility because I took the time to find it? Was it her title? Sometimes credibility simply comes through because of a title. But how else, when you're looking at different political elections, whether it's, the elections we're about to go through here in the U.S. or within your, your home country, how does someone exhibit credibility when speaking?
Give us details.
Gives you the details. So they're what about their topic?
Like step by step, they show us everything.
Okay. What does that mean? They're what about their topic? They have what? Knowledge.
Yeah.
They're knowledgeable about your topic. So first and foremost, when you're getting up to give a presentation, whether it's a presentation of yourself, a job interview, whether it's in one of your classes, you really want to be knowledgeable about your topic, but you also want to be knowledgeable about you. Again, what is your style? How do you portray yourself when you're speaking? How do you gain your own confidence? Other ways that people exhibit credibility are charisma, right? They're enthusiastic, okay? And that's maybe where that trustworthy, goes beyond the competence, goes beyond the knowledge, and they have that nonverbal, charisma, that sparkle. They get excited when they talk. They move their hands like I do. And again, we'll talk further about nonverbal cues. But specifically, I want you to think about credibility. Whenever you're giving a presentation, how are you credible? Are you trustworthy? What knowledge do you have about the topic? Are you knowledgeable enough? Okay? Well, I'll also mention with credibility, it's really knowing your audience. What does your audience know already? What do they already know? What do they want to know? And what do they need to know? Okay, so tonight I formulated some type of lecture, and I learned a little bit about you from Professor Jambeck. What should I do? So I'm figuring out, what do you perhaps know already? What do you want to know? And then I'm going to give you my take on what I think you need to know. Here's the other thing I'll say about rhetoric, if you can follow me. Rhetoric also has judgment. So tonight, I judged, based on what choices I have, what material to present to you. You're also going to judge me on whether I'm credible. Okay, think about that. So rhetoric, if we're really going to get deep, and I get really excited about this topic when I think about public speaking, it also has forms of judgment. Again, we'll save that for a later time, okay? So credibility is ethos. The second thing is pathos, and you graciously said it. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but pathos is actually emotional appeal. So how do people appeal to their audiences emotionally? Through what? How do I appeal to you emotionally if I am at all tonight?
Let's say for example, some commercial.
Okay, so how would a commercial appeal to you emotionally? The actual what? It's a form of rhetoric, a commercial, right? It's not only spoken word, but it can be written word and digital images, visual, right? So visual communication is also rhetoric. But specifically, if we're looking at emotional appeal, in public speaking, we say the words have the opportunity to give us that emotion, to give us that connection.
Give us some powerful words.
Exactly.
Say some.
Painting a mental picture, right? Using adjectives. Not just saying today was a long day, saying I woke up in the morning today at 5:30 a.m. Then I got dressed, right? I'm giving detail. So actually being very descriptive with your words is important. We lack that in much of our communication in the spoken word. People aren't flagrant with their words, right? We assume, and people really don't say what they mean, but we need to be very detailed with our words. The second way we appeal to an audience emotionally is through our nonverbal communication. Very important. So if I said, I'm really frustrated to be here tonight, you may believe it. If I said, I'm really frustrated to be here tonight, you might be like, right? So think about that. It's how we communicate nonverbally. And I'm not at all frustrated to be here. I'm actually very happy. So a smile, right? What Amy Cuddy was talking about. You don't have to necessarily fake it to make it, but nonverbal communication, how you visualize yourself giving a speech, is really going to play an important role in how you perhaps deliver that speech. So visualize yourself giving it. Have that powerful stance before you go and give a talk. And it will actually give you that confidence as well that's also credibility. Okay? I don't want to move too fast, and it can be quite complex when we talk about public speaking. So I want to make sure you're on point. So how we appeal emotionally is through the actual words we're saying, and then non-verbally what we're doing with those words. Okay? How are we emphasizing pitch, tone, inflection? And I'll hand a handout tonight that I think gives some really good ideas and ways in which you can focus on that nonverbal communication. High, low, changing your voice, emphasizing things that you want the audience to sit and think about. Silence. In the American culture, we think silence is really awkward. So if Professor Janbeck and I are sitting here, we're not saying anything, it's actually a very strong nonverbal cue. When speaking, if you're silent for 3 to 5 seconds, it actually gives the audience time to digest what it is you just said. And it's actually a way to emphasize an important point you just made, and then you may say it again. Repetition is also very, very important. Okay? Last but not least is logos. Okay, and this is the fundamental way that I teach an effective speaking course, is learning what these areas of proof mean. So logos, we can assume, means what? Logic, absolutely. How'd you know that? You took a shot? You took a shot and guessed? Or you, right? Okay, good. That's good. Don't be afraid to speak up. It sounds like it.
Yeah, it sounds like logo, like logic. So.
Exactly, right? So that's why we think ethos means emotional appeal, because of that E, even though it's pathos. So how is one logical? Well, they're clear, they're cohesive, meaning their ideas make sense, but how do they make sense? And this is also going to play a part in credibility and play a part in the emotional appeal, the pathos. You cannot make a claim without having evidence. Okay? I cannot say that one of our, political candidates is crazy without backing it up with evidence. And a thought just came to my mind. Forgive me, but he's, maybe doing that on his own. But, I have to have evidence whenever making a claim. So, if students tell me they're the most qualified for a position, what evidence do you have to back up that you're the most qualified for a position? What evidence do you have when talking, in political communication, or about political communication or nonprofit public relations? What evidence do you have on those companies to make certain claims about them or people, etc.? So very important. So the creation quickly of persuasive messages, and this can be writing, branding, creating a visual, spoken word, is that we need to invent what it is we're going to say. So first and foremost, nice meeting you, thank you. First and foremost, we must invent what it is we're going to say. So invention really just means, where are our ideas? What words are we actually going to put on paper? And then we actually impart our own style. So what is your style when speaking? What is your style when writing? And you can own that style. Are you perhaps more reserved? Do you not take on that alpha role? Are you not as powerful? Okay? Just because you may not be as domineering doesn't mean you don't have credibility. What she's specifically talking about is that if you have fear in public speaking, you have to believe and visualize that you can do it. The third is, how do we arrange the words? What's our beginning, middle, and end? How do we begin a presentation, and how do we end it, and what do we put in the middle of it? Okay, and again, that comes back to knowing what your audience already knows, knowing what they want to know, and knowing what they need to know. Okay? And last but not least is delivering it. Whether you're delivering a manuscript or an actual public speech, or talking to someone one-on-one, what's your overall delivery style? And the fifth canon, and these are Aristotle's how a persuasive message is created. The other one is whether we believe it or not, the proof that comes along. The ethos, pathos, and logos is the proof within a message that it's what? Trustworthy. Not only competent, but that it's trustworthy. He talks about memory. And it is important to not necessarily memorize a speech, because that can come off robotic, but to really know your material well enough that you can improvise and talk about it in a fluid manner. You can have some formality to it, but also some informal techniques to it by just knowing your topic at hand. And that comes through practice. Okay, mnemonics. Areas to consider as we move forward in the exercises that we're about to do is that, again, whenever public speaking, whenever thinking about getting in front of someone, know your audience, know your company that you're going to be delivering a message to. Know your professor that you will begin to speak to. Know your peers. Understand, again, what they know, what they need to know, and what they want to know. The second part of public speaking is realizing that listening is really important. Okay, listening is actually very important in public speaking. It's not me, the performer, up here. It's actually what? Whether I can tell if my audience is following me or they're totally disengaged. Are they falling asleep or are they awake? What are they doing? Are they tapping their feet? Are they ready for me to move on? So it's being aware of social cues within your audience, whether or not they're paying attention. The responsibility doesn't really lie on me as much as people think as the performer, the public speaker. It really relies a lot on the audience, because the audience often has a very hard time even following a presentation because of information overload, and that's a whole nother topic that we can get in with media. All right? The third part is nonverbal communication. Understand how important it is to, again, not have content that is rich and deep if we were to just read it on a piece of paper, but again, to deliver that richness, that deepness, that value. I can't speak enough about nonverbal communication, and you have to think about the person you're speaking to. Are you mirroring what they're doing? And that's a really good technique. Now, if they're acting totally domineering, you might not want to do that. But in a way, you often find success in client relationships, business-to-business relationships, when you actually are able to mirror what it is someone's doing. So if someone actually maybe puts their shoulders back and looks a little bit more relaxed with you, you might not be as stoic. You might then adjust your shoulders. If they smile, you would smile back, right? If someone smiles at you, you don't go like this. That's not nice, first of all. That's just 101, basic life skills. But we really want to think about nonverbal communication. Fourth, we obviously have to think about content. You can't just be engaging and charismatic without the content to back it up. You have to have some substance. It's very important. What Amy is talking about is the fact that we focus on content so much as a society, but we really forget the nonverbal communication aspect to it, the social aspect. I think back to a case study I read of it a number of years ago. These engineers from MIT created this plane, this airplane part, that would make every airplane, legitimately, I believe it was, get somewhere to a destination 30 minutes faster than it could. Well, that would save on flight time, gas, what they're paying their, the pilots, etc. They'd be able to, make more money, sell more flights. And these group of engineers went out, they got a patent on the part, and they couldn't sell it. Now, they obviously what? They understood what the part could do, but they couldn't articulate that non-verbally when they went to sell it to bigger organizations or companies. What happened, in the a long story, but in the short form, is that a group of pharmaceutical sales reps or medical reps actually ended up buying the patent from these engineers and ended up selling the part for a lot of money. Okay? They could sell. So what do I think there has to be? I think there has to be an agreement for people to understand that both content and nonverbal communication are important. You can't just be a con artist that's not trustworthy. You have to, again, have the content that backs up the way you deliver it. So that's what I'm going to say about that. And the overall structure, how you organize your speech is very important. How are you going to deliver something? Well, typically everything has a beginning, middle, and end, or it should. And how do you begin and engage an audience and keep that momentum going? How do you keep the audience wanting more? How do you end? Do you end abruptly? Do you end, without really giving a recap of what it is you talked about, etc.? Okay, the power of communication, how to really be a game changer, is confidently spreading your ideas and making your visions a reality. And so how do you do that? How do you turn these visions that you may have into reality? And again, that is through the art of rhetoric, and it truly is an art. Okay, it really is an art. And it encompasses everything. So I want you to continuously think about that through the packages that I handed out to you. What's very effective in public speaking is always repeating something that's very important. So leadership is defined by character. You can say that 3 or 4 times throughout your presentation, and you did, but say the exact phrase, beginning, middle, and end, because the audience tunes in and out whenever you're saying something, and they may miss something very important that you wanted them to know. So you always want to reiterate that those points that are of substance are of importance, your main point, your central idea, your thesis, what we learn in writing, your thesis statement and your central idea. So always make sure you bring it back full circle, and you did, but I'd say more specifically, say exactly what you said in the introduction, the middle, the body, we call that the body, the middle, and then the end. That's the most basic form of speech writing, right? So it's introduction, body, conclusion, most basic form of writing in general, what we learn from a very young age in school. Because we know that leadership is partly defined by character. Not that it's not, meaning there's other things that go along with it. She was basically saying that one can be competent, but they also need to have character, right? They also need to be trustworthy. Character comes through your values, your beliefs, if you have a certain value system, that you hold to it, right? That you don't go against it. And so that gives some, I'm stumbling on my words, that has to do with whether or not someone believes you. So it is both competence and character, and we can put content in there under competence that comes into play when public speaking. So I'm telling you that was hard to argue, because it is part of it, but you actually did very well in saying that it also has to do with background information, the history of someone, perhaps title, which has nothing. Well, if someone has a high job title, perhaps they've had really good character to get there, but not always. Think about that. So you did a great job. Thank you. All right, next group.
Do you want to go? Okay. So our topic was, is technology making people less creative? And it's kind of hard to argue for or against, because personally I see that it's gone either way, but I'm speaking that technology has made people more creative because in the past 10 years, more technology has been probably created than there ever has been. And also that companies probably wouldn't, that exist today probably wouldn't exist because of the technology. And I went to undergrad for graphic design, so I was constantly on a computer designing and doing things. So industries like that wouldn't even exist today without technology to help. But I think technology does make us more
Great.
Well, in my opinion, I think actually technology makes people less communicate these days, because when people just using any type of social media, they in the way how they just communicate each other, they just don't meet each other in person. They just kind of behind the computer, and also it's about websites where just people kind of criticize something, and anything in politician or just economics or everything. They just don't just sit in a meeting. They just kind of put just comments on the live resource. And also I'm also against that, because in the past people just use less technology, so they become just more creative and how to just calculate numbers, how to how to just simplify a number in their mind, not right now. They just put it in a calculator, and they just let the computer do everything, even for a design or a graphic, everything. They just used to do it by hand. So
Great.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. So another topic we could argue for and against, and it's really difficult. Technology has made us more creative, but maybe less creative in some ways. Less creative with what? Perhaps the spoken word. We're not as used to, having to get in front of an audience and speak when we really can be behind a computer. And in fact, many industries, many artisans, if you think of calligraphy and such, calligraphists, I think they're called. I'm not quite sure, but the machine has now taken that over, so it's actually taking the creativity out of that artisanal work, using your hands. But it's also made us much more creative in a sense. So I think you both did a sound job in arguing your point. Okay? before we go to the next exercise, I do want to kind of break quickly and just gain your attention again and talk about some topics. We often have a hard time, even as communication majors, defining communication, which I think is really interesting. So we want to know that communication is really a process, okay, in which we occupy different environments and we exchange messages, okay? And we exchange those messages. Right now I'm exchanging a message with you in a number of different ways, in a number of different contexts, okay? So through one or more channels, okay? And we respond to each other's messages through verbal and nonverbal feedback. Here's the thing. Here's what I learned in graduate school. It was one of the most important things I ever learned, okay? And I often joke that it's what I paid for. Communication, okay, and it was through my communication theory class. I had an excellent professor. I'll never forget him, Kevin Carnegie. He was amazing, okay? Communication used to be like this, very linear, right? Someone sends a message and we automatically assumed what? That person gets that message. So the sender, okay, is actually called the encoder. That's a communication term there. The encoder is actually the sender, and the decoder is the receiver, the person receiving the message. Okay, great. So I say something, I write something, I put something out there visually, and I'm going to assume that someone completely knows what I mean. Well, no. Actually, that thought is not true at all. And we actually believed that up until the 1960s, when we realized that communication is very transactional. It's actually when the school of thought behind HR, human resources, came about, that people are really important in how messages are being exchanged. So we realized that noise interferes with that message, and we actually can't assume that anybody sends a message and the person automatically understands it. We realize that feedback needs to happen. So in fact, there's a really great diagram out there. If you see linear communication, it's boom to boom. But if you see transactional, we really recognize that noise causes different interpretations to take place. We also realize that context changed how a message is what? Perhaps received, understood, etc. And what do I mean by context? So we have physical context, right? If I'm at a restaurant with my friend and I'm telling them something very serious, that message can actually become distorted, okay, based on what restaurant we're at or where we're eating. If I'm asking my boss for a raise in a restaurant, it might be what? Different than if I were going in and asking my boss for a raise in his or her office. So the actual physical setting changes the nature of a message. We also know that social contexts happen. So the nature of the relationship between the communicants. Okay, what's the relationship between them? Do you know that person? Do you maybe know what to expect? Do you know how they work? Does Professor Jambeck know my style? Probably now. She could probably attest to it, right? So she knows maybe how I'm going to deliver a lecture. What is it going to look like? What's Professor Vicente's style? And vice versa. We also want to know that there's chronological context, that time influences interaction. Time really has a very important role in influencing how one understands a message and the interactions that are happening, the feedback. Again, so we have that noise distortion, and noise can be physical, right? Someone could be delivering a message through spoken word and a cell phone rings and it throws the speaker off, or it throws the audience off, right? Food is delivered, okay? It can become what? Physiological. Your belly starts growling and you're hungry and you see the food and you get up and start to eat, and then I'm like, nobody's paying attention. They care more about the pita chips and mozzarella balls. I don't know. It could also be psychological. When you deliver a message, and I often face this with students, they may have heard something before and they begin to get on the defensive. I know this, I've heard this. Okay, which really stops the lifelong learning process. Don't ever think that if you've heard something, there's many different perspectives, and you need to hear things in life more than once as lifelong learners. Okay? That's how you want to be, a student for life. Not paying college tuition, but a student for life, always learning, always having a thirst for that. So that's the noise. I'm sorry, I jumped, I skipped. Back to context. So we realize that there's physical, social, chronological, and there's cultural. What's the cultural? And do I mean just people's backgrounds and ethnicities? Absolutely not. Do people, backgrounds, and ethnicities make up an organization? Absolutely. So I mean both people's, okay, cultural experiences, communities, whatever you may want to term them, as well as organizational cultural practices and policies. right? If I put something out there, I might be able to assume how my organization is going to receive it based on what? The organizational culture. Will it be accepted? Will it not be accepted? We have to be aware of these cultural contexts, of these social, of these time, and of these physical. Again, that's where people fall short in public speaking. They don't understand their audience, they don't understand the context of which they're delivering the message, and there's 4 you have to be really aware of, and they don't understand how the noise can distort that message. Not only physical, psychological, and physiological. You know, does a person have a hearing disorder, and do you not know that? And are you speaking to them the whole time and they're just going like this, but they didn't even understand you? Or is there a language barrier? And how do you put that out there? How do you say that openly? How do you, these are things we have to deal with and think about. Okay? This is a big problem in politics because people deliver these messages to the masses. And let me tell you something. There's no such thing as a mass audience. We have niche audiences that make up a mass. There's no such thing as a mass audience anymore. If we assume that, we're very wrong in communication. Okay? And that term does not exist in my theory of, of media and do we really have a mass media? And some of your other professors may argue that yes, there are mass audiences. Not really. There's niche audiences within a mass audience, but you can't deliver that message the same way, and that's a big, big wrong thing in politics.
That's
okay?
why we have targeted audience and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, but what we often make the mistake is we don't really, we have politicians and people going out there that don't get that, and they deliver this one message and assume that everybody understands it in the same way, and it's not really how we operate anymore. So that term has fallen. We used to think there was a mass audience in communication, but again, that school of thought is very much changing with where we are today. Okay, so these things, it's amazing how what you study in your communication courses really come full circle to speaking and to thinking about the information overload, the idea of there not being a mass audience. I mean, these things that you're learning in your communication courses really tie together, and I want you to be aware of that as students. Okay? Okay. So, again, we also have different listening styles. We have different, things that we listen for, okay? Some of us might be empathetic listeners. Some of us might be content-oriented listeners. And if we know that about ourselves, we're listening for specific things. Professor Jambeck might be drawn to what's the content first, and then if someone's, got the charisma, that's great, but I'm really focusing on the content. Or she may look for both. Are they delivering the content in a charismatic way? I might be someone who looks really for the charisma and then, okay, wait, I've got to get back to the content. They just can't sell me on their charisma. So again, we have different listening styles, and it goes further into that. I want you to be aware of, though, if you're an effective speaker, you're not always a performer. What you are is also a listener, and what you're listening for, okay, is what the audience is getting from you. What do you want the audience to listen for? So do you want them to listen to content? Do you want them to listen for feelings? Do you want them to listen for intent? What is it you as a speaker want the audience to do once you deliver a message? What is my purpose tonight? What is it I want you to gain from this workshop? Okay? And so I've got to make sure that I'm putting a message out there that is giving you some intent. Okay? And then context. How does the setting help you understand the message? So I talked about many things tonight, and what I keep saying I'm going to leave you with one last thought, but what I want you to think about is that we're drawn to storytelling, we're drawn to narrative, we're drawn to it. Okay, so another effective tool that speakers use when they want their audiences to really mirror what it is they want them to do, or whatever it is they're asking their audience to do, is they tell a story. You have to be able to tell a story. Okay? Whether it's someone else's story or whether it's your own personal story. We're just drawn to that, and it gets people to listen. So you typically don't ever want to just begin, a lecture nor finish a lecture without a story. So what drew me to Amy Cuddy's video was actually not what I showed in the first 12 minutes. It was actually the fact that she then gave her own personal story, which, yes, it grabbed at my heartstrings of how she got to become a professor, as she teaches at Harvard. So that was the school that she mentioned. And her story of triumph and her story of defeat and then getting back up again and defeat and getting back up again and believing in herself. So there's a story element often in great speeches. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor.